We're back.
back.
Welcome to Ad Space. My name's Elise.
And I'm Jackson.
Each week, we'll be breaking down the most buzzworthy campaigns, social trends, and advertising news through the eyes of Gen Z.
With sharp analysis, authentic debates, and real audience insights, we'll unpack how Gen Z responds to the strategies shaping the industry today.
Let's get into it.
So, back from hiatus.
And as you saw, obviously, if you watched our last episode, you know we were doing the National Student Advertising Competition. Huge advertising competition that was done for the past 4 years. Jackson started for the past 3 years. We were working on submitting our materials, putting together our big districts presentation. Presenting it, yes. And for the first time since 1989, we brought the trophy home to KU, which is pretty awesome.
We're very excited. It's just such a good way to end our senior year.
Absolutely.
And just, I don't know, the J School, everyone's very proud of us. We're proud to represent the J School there.
Very proud of our team and all the awesome people that have worked on this. So, yeah, we're excited. We can't say much more about the competition, obviously, but stay tuned till amateur finals.
Welcome to the Ad Update, where we debrief the most impactful campaigns from the last week. First up, we have Pinterest with the "How Did They Do It" campaign with their new tagline, "The best thing you could find online is a reason to go offline." Very interesting stuff. And this was done by their in-house agency, Pinterest's House of Creative. Kind of interesting name. But so just little description of the concept here. So Pinterest is telling us to put down the phone with this omni-channel campaign focused on getting you offline. The hero campaign, "How Did They Do It?" is a 60-second spot narrated by a little girl asking how people did it, meaning how do they do life? How do they do life without sharing every moment online or figure out what to do without inspiration online? The spot features vintage home videos and photos of real Pinterest employees.
Yes.
This was just such an interesting campaign given the moment. I think that we need to talk about Pinterest kind of found that nearly half of U.S. teens feel like they spend too much time on social media and that it negatively impacts people their age.
Oh, absolutely.
It's definitely, I feel that.
Yeah, and I think that's something, too, we've just, kind of naturally learned.
Yeah.
Looking at a lot of these campaigns and just, the research we know about Gen Z, even Gen Alpha. I agree. I think it comes at a wonderful time, just, in the conversation of social media itself, but also for Pinterest itself. We talked about multiple Pinterest campaigns, and also they're talked about them in the PR news section that we do.
Yeah.
How they recently switched their CMO back in February. She joined from Amazon, Claudine Cheever. And we talked about in that PR, when we were talking about it in our PR segment, how she's a huge fan of AI.
Yes.
And how we thought that might negatively affect the platform. And instead, it leans into this trend that we've been talking about just completely separately about how Gen Z is craving nostalgia, craving authenticity, buzzwords we mention all the time.
It's so interesting that it's done by Pinterest and not, I feel like most of the companies that I see during the analog trend are things that it's analog products,
Exactly.
or it's big for those Opal or those different apps that are trying to get you off your phones or
Brick and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Simple, the dumb phones. But it's surprising from Pinterest, and I think that's what makes it so impactful.
Exactly. And funny story about this ad. So I saw it for the first time last week. I was actually watching Hacks TV show, really good. I recommend. I've blown through the past 4 seasons. I was just had it on in the background while I was working on Insac stuff, and I obviously was streaming, and there were ads that came on, and I saw this Pinterest ad, and I genuinely stopped in my tracks and was so taken aback by just how not only beautiful the ad was, but the message. Within the first 10-15 seconds, I was like, oh my god, who what brand is this ad for? And then at the end, I thought it was so interesting how before they even popped up their brand logo, before they popped up the Pinterest logo, they like took all these photos and made them look like a Pinterest feed.
Yes.
And it was those like rounded cornered rectangles. And I immediately knew before I even saw the like logo, I knew, oh my God, this is a Pinterest
Pinterest
ad.
ad. Yeah.
Which
it
I think
almost
is awesome.
it's it's so cool that they took that like that Coca-Cola bottle effect of
Yes.
what that interface looks like. Which
Good idea.
I mean, there's like Instagram could do the same thing, but it's so cool that they owned that, and it's not really something like I don't really think about the fact that I
No.
know what the Pinterest feed looks like, but it was just so beautifully put together, and it made it the way that they put it after all this like cinematic footage. It made it make sense. It made the concept of Pinterest as an inspiration tool that you can find on offline activities with. It made the concept make sense. It was just such a beautiful way of displaying it.
I
I
agree.
don't know.
Absolutely.
And I think just one more thing before we talk about this. This is like it's not just something that people are talking about, this going off the grid.
Hmm.
People are actively doing this. So like 44% of like this Gen Z audience are actively cutting back on smartphone usage.
Yes. Right. And they're recognizing how it's not necessarily ruining their brains, but affecting their
Mhm.
vision of the world and how they go about their day.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And there's also a lot of government action in Australia, the UK, that have been pushing towards banning social media for minors, just because we are finding harmful effects.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just this campaign is coming in at such a good moment. It's capitalizing on this cultural phenomenon of going off the grid
I agree.
in just a really transformative way.
Yeah, we loved it. Great job, Pinterest. Following a trend we've been noticing for multiple episodes now, specifically with brands like Adidas, Saucony, Squarespace, on incorporating cinematic long-form video directed by a renowned Hollywood director. We talked about a few. But it almost seems like now a campaign is not complete without this element. I mean, we saw Pinterest do it similarly with their longer ad that they premiere on streaming. See it for some other things, and we're going to talk about one right now.
On as in like on cloud. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why, but when we were first talking about this campaign, I was like, what's on? On clouds. I thought the brand name the whole time was On Clouds. That's just the shoe one.
It's on.
But it's just on.
It's a learning curve. I went through a few. Anyway. But On is incorporating this cinematic long form video directed by Spike Jonze into their newest campaign, Dream Together, or The Shape of Dreams in parenthesis. So again, this is done by their in-house agency and Spike Jonze. Basically, the center of this is a surreal cinematic short film starring Zendaya and directed by Spike Jonze. It's less of a shoe commercial and more of like a high fashion fever dream that uses artsy choreography and dreamlike sets to celebrate the feeling of movement.
This like kind of type of ad almost reminded me of what Gap has been doing a lot recently with these like music video type like ads almost.
Yeah.
They're longer form. This doesn't feel like a music video. It feels like a story.
Yeah.
Kind of like a metaphorical story. But just this like way of using the cinematic long form video specifically with fashion, I think has been interesting. And for me, that works so well because you're able to show like movement of clothes, living in clothes, specifically what Gap did with dance.
Yeah.
Like when they used Cat's Eye to kind of show like you can move in your jeans no matter what they look like. Like they're exciting. They play to your personality. Like I think that's kind of like in the same vein of what this was in, but they did it in such a fresh way that I just think it worked for me really well. It was very cool.
It's also such a good vehicle to do this like transitioning your target audience.
Absolutely.
Where, we're seeing On is kind of typically known as like a tech brand, like tech wear kind of runner style. Or I think like Finance Bros, like always wearing the On Club sneakers.
Oh God, yeah.
But they're transitioning to more of a cultural lifestyle brand, right? And I feel like Zendaya is really at the center of this movement.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, she's like the center, obviously, like character person for this ad. And then I also think it was smart that they incorporated her stylist, Law Roach, who she's been working with for forever now. He has a little cameo in the little film, and I think I think it's smart, and I think she's a smart choice. She skews to a younger audience. She's had a long-standing relationship with this brand too.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, they're using her because she's the one like helping curate this new collection. But I agree. I think it's like a Zendaya effect. She's kind of helping reframe the brands from techie runner to cultural lifestyle powerhouse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think my favorite part of this campaign was the social content
Yes.
that Law and Zendaya were putting together on Instagram. It feels so organic. I feel like when brands try to do like collaborations with celebrities, or in this case where Law and Zendaya are kind of a celeb collab.
Hello,
Oh yeah, I was gonna
yeah.
say couple, but that's
No.
not exactly correct.
Too much on Tom Holland.
Not too much on Tommy. They're just, I don't know. It felt so organic and
Yeah.
didn't feel forced in the way that they're like showing them off. It's like a skit, but you still see the clothes,
Mhm.
and it's like they just look sick.
Oh my god.
Doing comedy skits.
And to like the way that I feel like I've just seen so many clips of Law specifically on social talking about like how we specifically picked these shoes for Zendaya for this like event because of XYZ. Just the way
Yeah.
that his mind works is so interesting. And their like long-standing partnership, I think made the social content and the ad itself just feel so much more impactful that both of them were in there. Such a strategic, but
They're not telling you about the fashion; they're showing you it.
Yeah.
I think that's what it really works.
agreed. Totally.
All right, moving on to the third campaign of the day. The WNBA is turning 30. Did you know that?
Okay, no, I did not, and I feel awful for not realizing this because I was like, 30? What do you mean? They've been around for much longer than that. No, they've only been around for 30 years.
It's kind of crazy to me.
It's crazy.
I feel like such an institution.
Yes.
The WNBA is coming out with it. It's their new platform. There's more where 30 came from. This first spot that they're coming out with, Raising Goats, is the first of 3 short films celebrating this short history that they've had. And pushing the brand into a future of exciting goats, right? Raising goats. It's all about features Cheryl Swoops, who kind of talks about the history of the WNBA and how it kind of transformed from more of a humble beginnings to this huge league that's being hugely celebrated right now. It's having such a big cultural moment.
Yeah, and if you don't know who Cheryl Swoops is, she was the first woman to be signed, to be drafted by the WNBA. She's a Olympian, NBA or WNBA championship winner. Super, super cool. She's also a mom too. Just lots of cool things about her. I think she was a great face for this campaign. We kind of were looking into like how they were bringing this to social because I think it's interesting. We're seeing this omni-channel campaign at the beginning of the omni-channel.
Yeah.
So obviously there's like content about it on their website and they're running the ad. But I mean, mainly they're just like launching and creating awareness on social for what the season's going to look like. But she does all this cool stuff where for the WNBA draft, she walked around Central Park with a ton of goats on leashes. And it created for like such funny social content that I think would grab anybody's attention but when you kind of realize like the intention behind it, it becomes so much more interesting. And then it's like, oh my God, what are they going to do next? What's the next of the short films that they're going to do? I want to be following this idea. I just think it was smart that just thinking about the omni-channel in this set, I'm liking where it's going. Moving on to our social trends, unless you've been living under a rock, hopefully you've heard about the Alix v. Alix internet beef. We're talking about Alix Earle versus Alex Cooper. Jackson, have you heard of this?
I know that they are mad at each other.
Do you know why they're mad at each other? At all? Nothing.
They're both named Alex, maybe?
Okay, well, to tap back into what obviously, I mean, I've listened to both Alix and Alex's podcasts, so anyways. But I did brush up for this podcast and watch a video of a lady explaining this entire beef ecosystem between the two Alexes on a whiteboard, which we'll talk about that more in a second. But essentially, Alix Earle, Alex Cooper, both influencers that got their start on TikTok. They both now have podcasts and these huge communities with all different things happening on social, product lines, all that kind of stuff. This beef extends all the way back to when Alex Cooper started at Barstool. And something happened. I'll shorten it for you, but something happened where she left Barstool and started her own Unwell network. Then she started her own podcast, Call Her Daddy, which obviously gained huge traction. She's had guests on there ranging from like Kamala Harris to oh God, who else? I'm blanking.
Don't look to me.
Jane Goodall,
There you go.
but also like Real Housewives, everybody.
Mm.
Then under that Unwell network, Alix Earle, who got her start when she was an influencer at UMiami and has now since graduated, her podcast then was under the Unwell network.
Okay.
Then the two of them ended up having beef at some point, split, but throughout all this time, they've had the same publicist.
Mm.
And then during Coachella weekend, Alex Cooper made a video calling out Alix Earle for this passive aggressiveness across social and that she just needs to come out and squash the beef. And nobody knows what the beef is. So there's the tea. There you go, Jeff.
So no one knows.
No one
Now
knows.
they're mad.
So the
Other
internet,
than the history.
yes, the internet has been going crazy trying to figure out if this is an actual like beef situation, something happened. So there's all these ties back to Barstool and just this whole like internet culture group and how there's all of that works now and like the politics of all of that, and if it's something that happened with like, was it money motivated, was it content motivated, where did it come from, or is it a publicity stunt? Because they both have the same publicist, who's kind of genius, with some other things that they've had happen
I
involved.
feel like they both just blown up so much.
Yes.
I mean, within the last year or two, there's no way that I don't know. I could buy into a conspiracy theory.
And they have such similar like audiences that
Yeah.
I'd be surprised at
Yeah.
that. But kind of how we like to think about like social trends, like how can brands kind of like tap into this as an idea that some people are talking about. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, how I watched a TikTok of somebody explaining all of this like beef on a whiteboard. That's like a whole section of the internet, probably
Yeah.
specifically TikTok, is like explaining celebrity beef for people so you can always feel like you're in the know. So it's almost kind of like, how can brands like tap into that and how can that help them kind of like position themselves as like a facilitator of knowledge, if you will.
It's funny, like reading through, just hearing about this, and in that kind of that trend of informers online and people who are like, let me tap you in. It reminds me, I used to be so obsessed with like YouTube drama, like people on like, I don't know, when I was like 14, just dudes that would like break down everything that was happening are with YouTubers. And it was all so stupid and dramatic and we probably made up, but
It got the views.
it got the views. TMZ never dies.
No, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I did like all of the different like internet groups. Like I think of like all the way back to like David Dobrik and like his like friend group on YouTube. And then when you get to TikTok, the like Hype House. Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, I don't know. There's always something to be talked about with the drama. So
No, it would be really cool to see how if a brand could almost tap into this or have their own informer that's like, oh, that would be really cool. And it's one of those tough nuts to crack that like really intrigues me because I don't know what it would look like. You know what I mean?
exactly. And I think it
It's
would
not
be
obvious.
it'd be fresh too, but you would have to like do it for the brand would almost have to do it in a way that feels like good for the brand voice. I know it
Yeah.
follows the brand voice, but I feel like these brands that are trying to cater towards Gen Z, that could absolutely be a possibility.
Yeah. A lot of risk there. A lot of risk to lose authenticity points, but
Exactly.
would love to see it.
And now the ad news. Let's jump into the latest ad and PR headlines from this week. We have one pretty big one that we saw just this past weekend at the Boston Marathon. So in one of the most visible spots on the race course throughout Boston, Nike placed an ad that said, "Runners welcome, walkers tolerated." It faced an incredible amount of backlash, specifically on social media and even from the people at the race watching, spectating, even from some runners too. It came off sounding way too stuck up. Nike ended up apologizing, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but they ripped the sign down and put something else up. Thoughts, Jackson?
So I will say we kind of have a different take on this. I think it's important to understand the controversy around this. It's an ableist thing to say. Like
Exactly.
straight up, that is the controversy. One quote from Robin McCod, who's a 50-time marathoner and a time qualifier in the adapted division, wrote, "Due to a spinal injury, I have to take walk breaks. Even with a cyst in my spinal cord, I regularly break 5 hours in Boston and plan to again this weekend. So thank you for tolerating me, Nike."
Yes.
And I understand that. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I think that I just have a problem because I like the fact that it is edgy, right? I like the fact that it harkens back to like my favorite Nike ad, which is
Yeah.
the you know, am I a bad person? Willem Dafoe ad. I think that it has this edginess that Nike doesn't always like to show.
Nah, they don't always lean into it as much as they could.
But I just love that. I love whenever, sometimes it, like being a professional athlete is about being better than others. It's about being mean and like cutting and going harder and harder and harder and like breaking yourself so that you can be the best.
Exactly.
And I think that message, runners welcome, walkers tolerated, is exclusionary. And I think that the fact that it is exclusionary, people are going to be hurt and offended. And I think that really wasn't Nike's purpose with
No.
it.
And I think too, when you take into account the place that the ad is in, I mean, Boston Marathon, to run in the Boston Marathon, you have to have a very, very competitive time with your marathon time. You've got to like qualify for it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think when you also take into account the space that it was in the Boston Marathon, it's a cultural spectacle for Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been going for how many years? Forever. And if you're going to school in Boston, you go to a bar and you watch it. If you live in Boston, you're going to go somewhere, or you're going to watch from your window, or you're going to go get with your friends and you're going to spectate. Like, it's just a thing. Runners and non-runners are watching the Boston Marathon. Though I think, like, in addition to obviously the comment that we just read from somebody that is a runner, I think it is getting back from people who were just spectating and watching me like, I'm walking, so am I just being tolerated too? And that's funny you mentioned one of your favorite Nike ads, Jackson, because one of my favorite Nike ads is Find Your Greatness one. And it's this like younger kid. He's a little more heavy set. He does not look like your traditional runner. And he's running down this like empty dirt road, like sweat pouring down his forehead. And he's just like, he's not very, very fast, but he's running. And he's giving it his all. And it talks about how kind of starting from nowhere, obviously the tagline is finding your greatness. And I think that this idea of obviously runners welcome, walkers tolerated is so contrasting to this idea of find your greatness. And I think we've been seeing a lot of ads from Nike in the past year talking about how anybody can be an athlete. And as long as it's almost this idea kind of like, is this idea of runners different than what this message is trying to say? That's nothing else we were talking about.
I think that, so for me, right, that the Find Your Greatness ad, it's this bigger guy running down a path, but it's the fact that he is running that makes it an ad. It's the fact that he is heavy set that makes it the ad.
Yeah.
If it was a skinny guy walking, like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's about the effort. And I think that's kind of what they were trying to get at. Runners are people who really put in the work, and walkers are people who are not putting in the work, I guess. And the fact that they were using the words runners and walkers it ended up being problematic, and I can see that.
Absolutely. And then I think not flip side to that, but moving on from that too, after all of this controversy online, they took it down and replaced it with the quote, "Movement is what matters," which to me felt so soft.
So boring.
Because, like, I totally, obviously, what they originally put up, not good. Missed the mark, Nike. But if you're going to, like, lean into this idea of, like, we are the brand for people who get up off the couch and move and do something about it. Movement is what matters. Feels just so like just soft to me.
The issue to me with movement is what matters is that it has no edge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like movement, walking to the chip cabinet, like that's like, I just feel like movement isn't a strong enough word to mean action. Action is what matters,
Exactly.
not movement.
Exactly.
I mean, it's hard to say because it's all, lingual semantics, but
Exactly. Okay, so then kind of going off of that, Jackson, thoughts on how Gen Z feels about pulling back messaging amidst controversy?
I think they lose points. I think they lose points for me and Gen Z as a whole. Whenever, in any case, whenever you're like pulling back or saying, "Oh no, we didn't mean that," you're losing authenticity points. Being a little messy is authentic, like it or not, but um, they definitely lose some points whenever they put up "this movement is what matters" ad instead of what they originally, I guess, wanted to say.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I don't know. It's a hard situation there, and it's really a loss. The win would have been never putting up the ad.
Exactly. And I think, like, especially for Gen Z, when it comes to handling controversies like this, because cancel culture is just obviously huge now. It has been growing in the past like 10 years. The way that you handle the controversy is there's so much weight. I think not always, but a lot of the time there's a lot of weight on the way that you handle it afterwards. And I think Gen Z really, really, really pays attention to that. And yeah, I think the way that they handled it.
Which the thing is, I think it's cool. Gen Z cares how you respond. They don't just blindly take the original action at face value. They
Exactly.
wait for the fallout.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the news.
All right, now is battle time. Our next segment is Battle of the Brains, where two brains will go head to head to see who tackled the brief better. Today we are going off something that also happened last weekend and the weekend before, Coachella. So Jackson and I both have a Coachella activation from two different brands, and we're gonna tell you about them, and we'll pick a winner. So, kind of going off of the first campaign that we talked about, my brand is Pinterest. So going off of Pinterest's analog ad, they promoted a phone-free Coachella experience. So they created a phone-free tent essentially at Coachella. And upon entering the tent, you had to lock your phone away with all of your stuff. And then you could enter in where they had these like digital cameras for you to record your experience so it wasn't like it felt lost upon you. You could still like enjoy the moment after with your friends, but you could make like friendship bracelets. You could get your hair and makeup touched up by Elf Cosmetics, a little brand collab there. You could mail yourself something back home. They had a little craft you could do and mail it back home. And then so that's what they did during the weekend. And then after the weekend, they picked two influencers to talk about their phone-free Coachella experience. So they used Quinlan Blackwell and Mickey Gordon, which I think were two interesting choices. I think one worked better than the other. I loved Quinlan Blackwell's video. She talked about how she'd been to Coachella before. She said, I'm searching for something different. And she said, I went phone free all weekend. She started the video, let's debrief Coachella. I went phone free all weekend with Pinterest. She talked about her like experience in the tent, how being with her friends and phone free was just a more of a fun experience for her. She felt like she could be more in the moment. She also tied it back to how she prepped for Coachella by searching for her outfits on Pinterest, which I thought was really interesting. And her videos have been performing very well on Pinterest's own socials. Then Mickey Gordon did a similar video too. After she got home, she said, let's debrief Coachella, talked about how one of her favorite parts of the weekend was going into the Pinterest tent. Yeah, so kind of like we talked about earlier with the Pinterest campaign, Gen Z is spending less time on their phones and is more interested in real life experiences. Pinterest is able to offer them that. Going off of that ad, this campaign, this activation specifically encourages people to be present and instead of constantly posting. And I think too, like immediate thought is you lose, but if we're not posting, then people aren't seeing us. That is why they asked these influencers to make these videos after they got home. So being present in the moment and then later talking about their experience, which is why I loved his activation so much, and that they specifically used those influencers in that way.
It was cute. I feel like influencers are, because they live life online so much, are almost like separated from this analog adventure that Gen Z is going on.
It's true.
But, bringing them into that and almost making it it's like the antithesis of analog, but it worked really well. It was cool. My brand, YouTube, they almost took an exact opposite route, I think.
That's
But-
true, we did.
So, with their little campaign behind the main stage. So, if you don't know, YouTube is actually who live streams like all Coachella performances and kind of does like the production recording of all the Coachella performances. So, YouTube set up an exclusive backstage hub at Coachella that invited artists and creators to drop in during the concerts, to create real-time content, behind-the-scene moments, and just live interactions. And they kind of gave like an authentic look into the influencers, them being, they're kind of on, you know what I mean? Like when they're at the concert, they have to be, their celebrity selves, but they still they kind of created moments that you wouldn't normally see at an event like this, just where they're chilling backstage with other celebrities. And then they captured a lot of these moments with Booth by Bryant photos, which is it's basically a vintage style photo booth, right? And then they also did some live Q&As with YouTube at the studio in the lounge. So what I liked about this was, I think that, Pinterest, you have they had a lot of influencers, but have two key influencers that really brought it to life. YouTube was really all about capturing a ton of activations and celebrities. So you have Good Mythical Morning, Cynthia Erivo, Caleb Marshall, Ben of the Week, a ton of names. Ty Dolla $ign, come on.
Yeah.
Performers who are there and actually performing in front of the audience and then coming back to take a rest. Not just people who are going to watch their favorite artist. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think it does. It's hard to really compete the two, because one, that's two different audiences, two different people that are engaging with the audience, right? But I don't know. I love the fact that we're seeing into the celebrities behind the stage. It's almost like a biopic of each, you know what I mean? Like a screenshot from their future bio.
Exactly. I think that's something too that kind of similar to how we're talking about, Gen Z's craving this analog nostalgic idea. YouTube is playing on the fact that Gen Z craves behind the scenes things. We're seeing things they don't already know about. Because especially with Coachella, really hit its high in 2016. A lot of the time, Coachella content can feel super saturated. I think it is just the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, it's an outfit check, and then you go to the concert, and then you tell me how your feet hurt, and then you go to bed, and you wake up that morning, and you do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think this gave Gen Z a new, obviously behind the main stage look.
A fresh perspective on Coachella.
Yes.
One from the opposite side of the stage. You know what I mean? You're seeing the real lives of your favorite artist or celebrity. So both campaigns tapped into some really great insights. I feel like this is a hard one. This is a competitive little race here.
Exactly. Well, you can let us know which brand you think won this segment of Battle of the Brands by going to our Instagram @theagencyKU to vote on either Pinterest or YouTube.
You've been listening to Ad Space by The Agency.
This episode was produced by Brenna Burnett and Joe Biundo. Written and edited by Steam Whistle Creative Team. Sound design and mixing by Wyatt Cooper. Videography by Madeline Mosen.
Special thanks to our faculty advisor, Dr. Rose. This podcast is a production of Steam Whistle Creative, made possible by the William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communications.
To keep up with new episodes, follow us on Instagram @theagencyKU, and don't forget to rate, and review. It really helps us out.
I'm Jackson.
And I'm Elise.
And we'll see you next time.
This student-produced podcast is opinions and commentary and does not reflect the views of any organization. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the podcast. Any opinions presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, the agency does not endorse, approve, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization represented or mentioned in this podcast. Copyright the agency 2025, all rights reserved. You may not reproduce, distribute, or modify this podcast without written permission.